Elvis was rushing a badly injured teenage girl to Memphis General Hospital when the emergency room doctor took one look at her face and said, "We don't treat her kind here. Take her to the colored hospital across town." Elvis looked at the 16-year-old girl, bleeding in his arms, and asked one question. "What kind of doctor are you?" What happened in the next 24 hours didn't just save one girl's life. It ended segregated medicine in Memphis forever. It was August 17, 1964, and Elvis was performing at the Mid-South Coliseum when something went terribly wrong. During an energetic moment in Hound Dog, part of the temporary stage barrier collapsed, sending several fans tumbling forward. A young girl was lying motionless on the concrete floor, blood pooling beneath her head. Elvis stopped singing and jumped down from the stage. The girl appeared to be about 16, with a serious head injury that meant seconds could make the difference between life and death. "Call an ambulance!" Elvis shouted, but then he saw how much blood there was and realized they didn't have time to wait. The girl was unconscious, her breathing shallow and irregular. Elvis could see that she had suffered a severe head injury when she hit the concrete. Every moment they waited increased the risk of permanent brain damage or death. "I'm taking her to the hospital myself," Elvis announced. He carefully lifted the unconscious teenager and carried her to his Cadillac, which was parked behind the venue. His bodyguard, Joe Esposito, drove while Elvis held the girl in the back seat, trying to keep pressure on her head wound and monitor her breathing. "What's her name?" Elvis asked the girl's friend who had climbed into the car with them. "Linda Washington," the friend replied through tears. "She's 16. She was so excited to see you perform. This is her first concert ever." Elvis looked down at Linda Washington's face and realized that she was black, a fact that, in 1964, Memphis was about to become tragically relevant. Memphis General Hospital was the closest medical facility. It was also the city's premier hospital, with the best emergency trauma unit in the Mid-South. For a head injury this severe, it was Linda's best chance of survival. Elvis rushed through the emergency room doors carrying the unconscious girl, her blood soaking through his jumpsuit. "Help!" Elvis called out. "This girl has a severe head injury." The staff recognized Elvis instantly, and nurses rushed over with medical equipment. For a moment, it seemed like Linda Washington was going to receive immediate care. Then, Dr. Harold Brennan appeared. Dr. Brennan was the head of emergency medicine, a 52-year-old physician who had built his career on surgical skill and rigid adherence to Southern segregation. He took one look at Linda Washington, and his demeanor changed completely. "Mr. Presley," Dr. Brennan said coldly, "I'm afraid we can't treat this patient here." Elvis stared at him in disbelief. "What do you mean you can't treat her? She's dying." "Memphis General serves the white community," Dr. Brennan replied matter-of-factly. "Colored patients are treated at Riverside Hospital across town. It's hospital policy." Elvis felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. "Doctor, this girl has a serious head injury. She needs surgery right now. There isn't time to drive across town." Dr. Brennan's expression didn't change. "Mr. Presley, I understand your concern, but we have protocols here. The colored hospital has perfectly adequate facilities for this type of patient." "This type of patient?" Elvis repeated, his voice rising. "She's a 16-year-old girl with a head injury. What type is that?" Several other staff members had gathered around, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, but unwilling to challenge Dr. Brennan's authority. "Sir," one of the nurses said quietly, "perhaps we could make an exception." "There are no exceptions," Dr. Brennan interrupted. "Hospital policy is hospital policy. If we start treating colored patients here, we'll have integration problems, insurance complications, and upset families. I won't have this facility turned into a mixed hospital." Elvis looked down at Linda Washington, whose breathing was becoming more labored. "How long to get to the other hospital?" he asked Joe. 20 minutes in traffic," Joe replied. "She doesn't have 20 minutes, Elvis said. He looked directly at Dr. Brennan. "Doctor, I'm not asking you to integrate your hospital. I'm asking you to save a child's life." Dr. Brennan's voice remained cold and clinical. "Mr. Presley, you're an entertainer, not a physician. I'm telling you that this patient can receive appropriate care at the designated facility. That's where she belongs." "She belongs wherever she can get the best medical care," Elvis shot back. "And that's not here," Dr. Brennan said with finality. Elvis stared at this man who had taken an oath to do no harm and was now willing to let a child die rather than treat a black patient in a white hospital. "Fine," Elvis said quietly, "but I want you to know that you're letting this girl die because of the color of her skin. I want you to remember that when you go to sleep tonight." Elvis picked up Linda Washington again and headed for the door. As they were leaving, he turned back to Dr. Brennan. "And doctor, this isn't over." The drive to Riverside Hospital was the longest 20 minutes of Elvis's life. Linda's breathing became increasingly erratic. Twice, Elvis thought she had stopped breathing altogether. Her pulse grew weaker and more irregular. When they finally reached Riverside Hospital, the underfunded, understaffed facility designated for black patients, Elvis rushed through the doors with Linda still unconscious in his arms. The difference in facilities was immediately obvious. The emergency room was crowded and chaotic, with limited equipment and overworked staff. Dr. James Crawford, the head of emergency medicine, took one look at Linda's condition and began working frantically to save her life. "How long ago was the injury?" Dr. Crawford asked as he examined Linda's pupils. 45 minutes, Elvis replied. Dr. Crawford's face went pale. 45 minutes? Why didn't you take her to Memphis General? It's half the time and they have better neurosurgical equipment. Elvis explained what had happened at Memphis General. Dr. Crawford's expression shifted from concern to rage, but he channeled that anger into saving Linda Washington's life. "We'll have to operate immediately," he told Elvis. "She has a subdural hematoma, bleeding in her brain. Without surgery, she'll die within the hour." Dr. Crawford and his team worked for 6 hours to save Linda Washington's life. Elvis waited in the hospital corridor the entire time, still wearing his blood-stained jumpsuit, refusing to leave until he knew she would survive. When Dr. Crawford finally emerged from surgery, he looked exhausted, but relieved. "She's going to make it," he told Elvis, "but it was close. Another 10 or 15 minutes and we would have lost her." Elvis felt a mixture of relief and rage. Linda Washington would live, but only because Dr. Crawford had been willing to perform emergency brain surgery with inadequate equipment in an underfunded hospital. She had nearly died because Dr. Brennan valued racial segregation more than human life. That night, Elvis couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Dr. Brennan's cold refusal to treat a dying child and about how many other people might have died because of similar policies at hospitals across the South. The next morning, Elvis began making phone calls. He contacted the Memphis Medical Board, the hospital administration, and the local newspapers. He wanted Dr. Brennan's actions investigated and publicized, but Elvis quickly learned that Dr. Brennan's behavior, while morally reprehensible, was not technically illegal. Hospital segregation was still legal in Tennessee in 1964, and individual doctors had broad discretion about which patients they would treat. "I'm sorry, Mr. Presley," the medical board chairman told him, "but Dr. Brennan was following established hospital protocols. We can't discipline him for adhering to policy." That's when Elvis decided to take a different approach. He called the one person in Memphis with more influence than any doctor or hospital administrator: his lawyer. Within 48 hours, Elvis had filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against Memphis General Hospital, Dr. Brennan personally, and the Memphis hospital system as a whole. The lawsuit alleged that the hospital's segregation policy violated the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and had nearly resulted in the preventable death of a minor. The lawsuit made national headlines, not just because Elvis was involved, but because it was one of the first major legal challenges to hospital segregation in the South. Dr. Brennan tried to defend his actions in the press. "I was following established medical protocols," he told reporters. "Memphis General has always served the white community, and there are appropriate facilities for colored patients. I won't apologize for maintaining professional standards." But Elvis wasn't finished with Dr. Brennan. He used his celebrity status to bring national attention to the case, appearing on television programs and giving interviews about Linda Washington's near-death experience. A 16-year-old girl almost died because a doctor cared more about segregation than saving lives, Elvis told Walter Cronkite on CBS Evening News. "That's not medicine. That's murder." The pressure on Memphis General Hospital became overwhelming. Civil rights organizations protested outside the hospital. Medical professionals criticized Dr. Brennan's actions. The hospital began losing federal funding as government agencies investigated their discriminatory practices. Most damaging was Dr. Crawford's testimony, who explained exactly how the delay had nearly killed Linda. In severe head trauma cases, every minute matters, Dr. Crawford testified. The delay caused by Memphis General's refusal reduced her survival chances by 40%. Dr. Brennan's decision was medically negligent. The federal court ruling was decisive. Judge William Miller found Memphis General guilty of violating the Civil Rights Act and ordered immediate integration of all Memphis medical facilities. Dr. Brennan was ordered to pay damages to Linda Washington. The ruling established legal precedent used to integrate hospitals throughout the South. Within 2 years, hospital segregation was effectively ended across the region. Dr. Brennan's career never recovered. The medical malpractice judgment and the negative publicity made it impossible for him to continue practicing medicine. He left Memphis in 1966 and spent his remaining years as a small-town doctor in rural Mississippi. In a 1975 interview, shortly before his death, Dr. Brennan was asked if he regretted his actions that night. "I was doing what I thought was right according to the standards of the time," he said. "But I realize now that those standards were wrong. That girl could have died because of my prejudice, and that's something I've had to live with." Linda Washington recovered completely from her injuries. The brain surgery performed by Dr. Crawford at Riverside Hospital was successful, and Linda suffered no lasting effects from her head injury. She went on to graduate from high school, attend college, and become a nurse herself. "Elvis saved my life twice," Linda said in a 1994 interview. "Once by getting me to medical care, and once by making sure that what happened to me never happened to anyone else." Throughout her nursing career, Linda worked to ensure that all patients received equal care regardless of race. She often spoke at medical conferences about the importance of treating every patient with dignity and respect. Elvis maintained a relationship with Linda and her family for the rest of his life. He paid for her college and nursing school tuition. When Linda married in 1970, Elvis walked her down the aisle in place of her deceased father. The lawsuit settlement also provided funding for significant improvements to Riverside Hospital, transforming it from an underfunded facility into one of Memphis's best hospitals. The legal precedent was used in hundreds of similar cases, effectively ending hospital segregation throughout the South. Federal legislation requiring equal treatment regardless of race, known as the Elvis Amendment, saved countless lives. Today, Memphis General Hospital is one of the South's most diverse medical facilities. There's a memorial in the emergency department dedicated to Linda Washington and all patients who suffered under segregated medicine. The plaque reads, "In memory of those denied care because of prejudice and in honor of those who fought to ensure healing knows no color." Linda Washington died in 2018 after a distinguished 45-year career in nursing. At her funeral, Elvis's daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, read a letter that Elvis had written to Linda on her nursing school graduation day. "You turned a moment of tragedy into a lifetime of healing. You proved that the best response to injustice is not anger, but action. Thank you for showing the world that nurses and people come in all colors and that caring has no boundaries." The story of Elvis, Linda Washington, and Dr. Brennan reminds us that health care is a human right, not a privilege to be granted or denied based on prejudice. Elvis could have simply taken Linda to the appropriate hospital and accepted the segregated system. Instead, he chose to fight for a principle that was more important than convenience or social pressure, the principle that human life has value regardless of race. Sometimes the most important battles are fought not on stages or in recording studios, but in hospital corridors where life and death decisions reveal our true values. Elvis used his fame and influence to ensure that no other child would face the choice between segregation and survival. In doing so, he helped create a medical system where healing truly knows no color. If this incredible story of courage and justice moved you, make sure to subscribe for more amazing true stories about standing up to discrimination in all its forms. Share this with someone who works in healthcare or who needs to hear about the power of using privilege to protect others. Have you ever witnessed someone refuse to accept injustice in a medical setting? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that notification bell for more inspiring stories about fighting for what's right.